Then, of course, I was born in Rankton in summer of 1632. We were of the Church of England, though we were privy to Puritanism. About the age of 10 or so, Charles I and the Parliament began their fighting. My father was a captain of parliamentarian cavalry, so naturally, I don't believe in divine right of kings. A few years later, I was off to the Westminster School in London. The headmaster there, Busby, was a strict one. Time there was interesting. I remember all the way when Charles I was executed. Westminster barred us from going, even when it was just half a mile off the school grounds. Shame for it. Besides that, it was typical. I was elected a King's Scholar, but I didn't care much. Never was a fan of boarding schools. Much preferred the idea of private tutoring. Much more suitable. And then at 20, I went to Oxford. It was nothing more than dull.
Nerd.
Wasn't on any required work, but I began reading about several natural philosophers. Graduated a few years later. Of course, I met some people there. Those who advocated for the new science. Wren, Hooke, Boyle. Plenty of them. Then the Restoration came. Plenty of science men, but there were lots of odd behaviors from the undergraduates. Never been a fan of change like that. Have you been doing that the whole time? Haven't taught you anything yet. Seemed important. I have far more important things to say. Let's start.
Like most smart people, John Locke could be very chatty when he wanted to be. When I found him and asked him to learn from him, he seemed very pleased.
Now, do you think humans come preloaded with ideas?
No?
Right answer. Knowledge is constructed through a process of input, processing, and conclusion. The processing or reasoning is essential. Reason is natural revelation from God, which itself must always be rational. There's two kinds of revelation, genuine and traditional. Genuine is original. It comes from God and is given to humanity. What he reveals to us is true. Meanwhile, traditional revelation is transferred from person to person. For instance, in the Bible, God speaking to Daniel is original. However, a sermon on what was said would be traditional. Now, what do you think the purpose of education is?
To learn?
To gain knowledge and know content, yes. Did you inherently know anything?
Yes. I don't know.
All right. You know nothing inherently. That's because we're all born a blank slate, or tabula rasa. We have no a priori knowledge. We don't know anything until it's encountered. Having experience with something writes information onto our slates.
So, how do we know we understand it if we don't know anything until we experience it? How could we comprehend it?
We need help with that, which is why we have education. It helps us learn to process experiences with reason. Having an education teaches us to think. It helps us connect ideas. Sensory experiences get labeled. Those labels become ideas. And we develop knowledge by connecting and building ideas together.
So people don't have anything inherently?
Knowledge-wise? No. In the matter of rights, yes. Humans inherently should have the right to life, liberty, and property.
Liberty?
Men should not be severely constrained by any superior earthly power. Only the law of nature. With such freedom we have liberty.
There has to be stipulations to that, though, right?
There is. Society puts boundaries and parameters on liberty based on shared values. But of course, social constructs protect these innate rights. Therefore, with all that in mind, it reminds me of a story once when I was a little boy in Scotland wearing a dress in front of my nanny.
2 hours later.
All right, so Locke seems to have a lot of perspectives that connect back to other philosophers. I suppose that makes sense. He did mention that he read about several of them while he was at Oxford. He seems to work off a lot of these pre-existing ideas. John Locke believed that knowledge wasn't inherent but came from experience. That ties back to a bit to Aristotle, who also believed in the importance of experience in gaining knowledge. In a similar vein, he would likely disagree with Descartes more often, as Descartes agreed with the concept of humans having a priori knowledge. John Locke also mentioned social contract. He pretty directly opposed Thomas Hobbes on that front. Hobbes believed people agreed and consent to certain things in order to keep protection, but Locke believed that social contracts should continue to remain focused on the protection of the natural rights, not just about survival. I should probably study this. You forgot to kiss her, babe.
Now, do you think humans come preloaded? We need help with that, which is why we have education. It helps us learn to process experiences with reason. Cut.